It's no ordinary police procedural. Download the Law and Order podcast. These are their stories. Join hosts Kevin Flynn, Rebecca Lavoie, and their special guests as they take an irreverent look at an episode from either SVU, Criminal Intent, or Original Recipe, the ones you've seen a million times in reruns. After the recap, they talk about the real-life crime cases that inspired the shows. Tune in for their regular features like Favorite Detective Team, Hey, It's That Guy, and Ripped from the Headlines. You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Subscribe to These Are Their Stories, the Law and Order podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or go to lawandorderpodcast.com.
This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
This is season 2, episode 1, everyone.
Oh my God!
Season 2.
Thank you so much for coming back.
Right?
Can you
to
even
us.
believe that we made it this far?
We made it.
No.
We're sorry we made you wait.
We didn't. We released a lot of content.
Yeah, we actually gave you more than you normally get.
Let's take breaks more often. All right, we're all excited to be back. If for some reason this is your very first time listening, this is the show where we rewatch, recap, and give the latest updates to cases featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries.
Segment by motherfucking segment.
Yeah, we do. And we're just excited to get into it. We have a couple things to talk about and take care of before we do our segments. So if you don't know, for every iTunes review we receive, and it's really important that you know it's actually written reviews and not just clicking 5 stars. For every written review that we get, we donate $1 to a different organization each month. This month's organization is Relay for Life, the Portland chapter. And Relay for Life is a team fundraising cancer walk events where team members take turns walking around a track or designated path. Each event is 6 to 24 hours in length, and each team is asked to have a member on the track at all times to signify that cancer never sleeps.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
such a great organization.
Yeah, I didn't realize the symbolism behind
Yeah.
it.
That's awesome and so sad. So yeah, that's who we're donating to for the month of September. So please go and leave your written reviews. We'd love to read them and then also be able to help out this great organization. And we also have some patrons to shout out. Karlin?
Patrons! Thank you so much to Caitlin O, Anita F, Josh L, Alexis G, Mary C, Brittany P, Rebecca D, Mikkel E, Allison T, Amy C, Robert B, Ella R, Samantha G, Claire, Benjamin T, Anonymous, and Tom W.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I feel like we should go on hiatus more often because why buy the cow, you know? So if you are a patron, the first episode of the Forgotten Few series, which I'm so excited about, and we're actually recording tonight, it's all of the cases that were cut from the re-edit by FilmRise and Unsolved Mysteries.
So these are the segments, the episodes that you cannot get.
Yes, they
But
are
we're going to tell you the stories.
the Forgotten Few. Actually, the Forgotten Many. There's so many.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so excited.
The many, except a few of the fraudies that we left out.
Yeah, because goodbye. Also, we had a listener party for our season finale, and it was so fun. And we're definitely going to do it more often
Yeah, it
for our
was super
patrons.
fun.
We had everybody chatting at the same time, and it turns out that our listeners are so funny.
You guys are funny.
and quick and just amazing. And
It was a great time.
We had a blast. That's something that we're going to be doing more often for our patrons as well. So get access to our newest series along with the 50 States of the Unsolved and THDI, the Husband Did It series, and early access to listener short stacks and other content. Go to patreon.com/resolve mysteries podcast. What are we talking about this episode?
Well, the first segment is about Jim Meade Jr. and Lieutenant Betty Stevens.
Oh, it's a saddie.
It's
so
a goodie.
good. And then
Oh, boy. What's an alien sound?
God,
Very
you are such a good whistler.
good.
It's so weird.
Thank you.
Eliza and I are sharing Roswell.
Roswell.
And both of us are equally excited about it.
They've been in the desert. for so long.
What is that like biblical guy that was in the desert for 40 years or
Talking
whatever?
about Moses?
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like the Moses of Roswell.
We're going to part the Red Sea.
Yeah.
You're a part of Sea of Aliens.
There will be things to learn, though. I have never cared too much about aliens, so I've never looked into it.
You?
Can you believe?
It's shocking.
And so I actually learned things.
Do you know what? I thought that Roswell might be legit. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
There we go. How you feeling, KB?
How you feeling?
Great. Well, I was just debating if I wanted to start
this
by
or not.
showing you a photo of Jim Meade Jr. before he went into handsome, right?
Yes.
Very dreamy.
Yeah, true dreamboat.
Dreamboat.
A little different than the picture you printed out, but it's okay.
Okay, well, I'm just going by what UM gives me.
Mouth agape.
Well,
That's the name of your
I'm
sex
just
tape.
kidding. Yeah. Okay, so segment 1, Lost Loves.
Way to start it off strong.
I know.
Actually, this is a really strong segment.
it's a
It's
cute
so
one.
moving.
it is really good.
I didn't expect to be so moved. It's about Jim Meade Jr. and his search for Lieutenant Karen Betty Stevens. So Stack starts off by telling us about how helicopters played a crucial role in the war as, quote, the line between base camps and the field.
The Vietnam War.
Yes, sorry, the Vietnam War. Stack also shares some Stack facts. He tells us that the pilot's chance of being killed was 9 times greater than any other soldiers, and that 1 out of every 8 helicopter pilots in Vietnam lost his life.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, pretty staggering statistics. He says that these pilots truly were heroes over actual war footage of injured, bloody soldiers on being moved around on stretchers, and it's awful. And it's just so interesting to me how you would never see that on TV now.
Nope.
Ever. Like, I'm surprised how much they showed.
Well, Vietnam was the first war that they basically were broadcasting.
Yeah.
And that's
At
why.
home in real time, too. So they have so much footage.
So Stack says that there were other heroes in the war, and one group in particular who was largely unsung, which were the military nurses. Seriously, true heroes. Being a nurse is already such an important and difficult job, and I cannot imagine doing it in like such an environment of chaos and like horror.
And fear
It's
for your
crazy.
own life, too.
Yeah. Stack intros his scene while walking through the National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, which he says is a section dedicated to the nurses that lost their lives in the war. Stack explains that it's one of the few memorials in the U.S. honoring the nurses.
It's really nice.
It is really nice.
We should have more.
So then we meet Jim Meade, an Army helicopter pilot whose life was saved by Nurse Lieutenant Betty Stevens. Stack says for 15 years he's been searching for her, which is crazy that Vietnam had only been 15 years prior.
Yeah.
That's not a long time.
Recent.
I didn't even think of that.
That is more recent than September 11th for us now.
Yes! That's
Holy
exactly what I was
shit.
thinking.
That's crazy.
Whoa.
Like, that's fresh.
Oh my God.
He says he'd been looking for her, but there was mysteriously no record of her having gone anywhere. Stack says he simply wants to find her and say thank you. So 1965, 18-year-old Jim Meade Jr. gave up going to college to serve in Vietnam. As I showed you in the picture, he's very handsome, like bright young man. Jim's father, James Meade Sr., says they tried to talk him out of it. A professor at the U of O tried to talk him out of it. Shout out, honey, that's where I went to school.
Yeah.
He says that they tried to convince him to go to school first, saying, quote, the war will still be there when you finish college.
God. What a...
And, there was no doubt about that.
I know.
So that's just awful. But James says that he was determined, so he went to war. So I'm going to insert a little background info here about like that whole mindset was that Jim's family was a military family. They don't talk about this at all in UM. Jim's dad, James Meade Sr., was about 50 at the time of the airing and had spent 26 years in the Army.
Okay.
A quote from him from 1972 article that I read said, quote, we went along with the old slogan, duty, honor, country. So I'll come back to that later. What UM does not tell us, and I did not know until I found some newspaper articles from 1973, was that Jim had also been very recently married.
What?
Yeah. They don't talk about it in UM at all. So he was not only leaving behind like school and his youth, but a brand new wife. And I found out from later articles that his wife had basically become pregnant like right before he left for war.
No.
Why would they not mention that?
Well, yeah, we'll get into it. Stack says in the winter of 67, Jim, quote, won his wings as an Army helicopter pilot. Jim's mom, Christine, says it didn't surprise her that Jim would want to give to his country. She says being a pilot in the rescue mission were all things that were, quote, part of Jim. Stack says Jim served in Vietnam for only 3 months. Some of the articles I read said 4 months. But he was transporting troops to and from combat missions. He was shot down twice, and twice he went back. One article I found from 1973, and I'll explain why I found a bunch of articles from 73, said that in 4 months, Jim had flown 250 missions and crashed 3 times.
God, what?
It's insane.
How?
He'd been there
go
4
back
months.
up there.
Oh my God.
May 8th, 1967, he was shot down for the 3rd time, and this time he wouldn't be able to go back. May 9th, 1967, Jim's parents received a, quote, vaguely worded telegram saying he'd been placed on the, quote, seriously ill list because of a fractured skull.
Did you notice in the telegram they misspelled ill? They used 3 L's instead of 2.
Oh, no, I did not.
Yeah. It's like you can't even vaguely tell somebody's parents that they're seriously ill without like
Wow.
a misprint. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine getting a telegram like that because it is vague, but I did note that it was like way more detailed than the one from my other
Right.
segment.
Yes. Muskogee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you also notice that Jim's parents totally lived close to us?
They did?
Their
They
address was on the telegram.
No.
Yeah.
They live
Like not far from here.
Really?
Yeah. So
Whoa.
they
Oh my
do actually
God.
show the whole telegram on UM. And it's, like I said, it's not nearly as bad as the telegram William Betts' family got when his ship was sunk, but it's still the most basic information.
And ill is not the same as like.
Well, it did explain it a little bit.
Okay.
So it said he'd gotten a fractured skull due to a crash during combat and that he was under the care of a certain doctor. It said that his condition was in such severity that there is a, quote, cause for concern, but no, quote, danger to life.
What?
Yeah, which is not accurate.
No.
It said, quote, please be assured that the best medical nurses and doctors have been made available and were taking care of him and that they would report on his progress. Stack says that he was transferred to Madigan General Hospital in Tacoma, Washington. So it's nice that they did try to get him close to home.
Yeah, seriously.
Jim's mom, dad, and 2 brothers waited for him in the hospital before he was even checked into his room. The family was obviously super antsy, wondering what was going on and how he would be. So his dad and his brothers
No.
decided to wander the halls.
No, I can't with this part. I cannot.
I forgot about this.
Yeah. They begin walking the halls and they see a soldier, is what they think, all wrapped in bandages. So this scene is definitely brutal. The guy is wrapped literally head to toe. His hands are covered with socks and his arms are tied down to the bed. And he's just like gasping and making gurgling noises. And Jim and his sons walk by and Jim says, quote, well, that soldier was tore all to hell. After a while, the nurse came and told them that Jim was in a room. They go into the room and see him, and James, in his interview, says through tears, we went into that room, and here was that gurney. That guy that was tore all to hell was my son. It's heartbreaking, beyond recognition. So, yeah, it was just terrible. Like, they truly did not even know it was him, even though they were, like, standing over him looking at him. Jim's mom says it was unbelievable. She says he looked nothing like himself. With tears streaming down her face, she says that she used to work in an ER and has seen some things, but, quote, I don't think I've ever seen anything as horrible as my son was. So that's really saying something.
Jesus.
Stack explains that the helicopter rotor blade had fractured Jim's skull and he was in a coma. So upon reading about this, like the rotor blade from the helicopter like came off during the crash and plunged through the cockpit into his head. So
It's amazing he
I
was
can't.
alive.
I can't.
oh, he is very
3
lucky to be alive.
times. He's survived 3 crashes.
And then
Let alone surviving like the impact of the crash.
yes, let alone every other broken body in your body.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
all
so
the
he did
bodies
have
that you
more-
have in your body are broken.
Yeah, he did have more injuries than that. So Stack says that he made, quote, animal-like sounds and flailed his arms involuntarily. So this is consistent with a lot of the articles and writings that I read saying that he was in an animal-like state afterwards and truly like had to be restrained because he was just like trying to get away and move.
I thought initially when he was flailing his arms, it's because he recognized his dad and his brothers.
Yeah.
But then they said that it was like uncontrollable.
Because this was like before he woke up.
Yeah.
Technically.
So his eyes are open, but
Traumatic brain injury stuff.
Yeah,
where
and
you
that
have-
part wasn't super clear in my research to like how long he was in a like actual coma before he woke up. Both of his legs were shattered and riddled with gangrene.
Oh.
Doctors feared he would never come out of his coma. Articles I read said that doctors had told Jim's wife and parents that he would probably not make it.
how come the wife isn't in it at all?
Well, I'll tell you. So his 4 months pregnant wife basically just thinks that her husband, who's in an animal-like state, will probably die. And if he doesn't, he's basically probably going to be like a vegetable. So she just is probably like hopeless. So to help you understand the type of strain this puts on a family, I'm going to insert another quote here from an article I read about Jim's dad from 1972. Quote, "My wife moved into the hospital in Washington and was at his bedside for 30 days. The agony and torture it was to us, you cannot imagine. He didn't lie still, but fought like an animal, and he had to be tied to the bed." So I think just like her being there and him not being there, like put a lot of strain on them. Stack says that as a last resort, they put him in the amputee ward with other soldiers who had served and asked them to talk to Jim as if he could hear them on the slim chance that the exposure to others might trigger a response.
I love that so much.
I love it too because
So nice.
I don't think there was like any research behind that whatsoever. They were just like,
What do we have to lose?
yeah, like why not have him in here like hearing voices and like
And the other vats, like one of the guys is like, what card game do you want to play now?
yeah, the reenactment
know.
was really sweet.
It
I don't know how
was.
like realistic that was, but I would imagine they've got a huge amount of sympathy for him. And
Yes.
yeah, it was really touching. Stack says, quote, "The experiment worked, and after 10 weeks in the ward, Jim came out of the coma. He'd forgotten how to talk and how to move his arms and legs." And this is a quote I found from a later article. Quote, "I woke up and I didn't know anything," Meade said. "I lost my memory of the past. The first 19 years of my life are gone." And I don't think he ever got that
Regained
memory back
that?
either.
Wow.
They then show Jim, and it's obviously been like 20 years later, but he looks so undamaged for the shape that he was in afterwards. Like in that
Yeah.
picture, like
It's I mean, miraculous.
I expected
don't
him to
have
have
another
like
word for
crazy
it.
scars
Me
or
too.
something, but
Yeah.
he looks pretty normal. He says that he didn't know he'd been a pilot in the war. He didn't know he'd been injured so seriously. He didn't really know anything. Stack explains that Jim is 42 now and has made a full recovery. He didn't have his legs amputated or anything, which is crazy because he had tons of gangrene. Jim feels that his full recovery was due in part to the, quote, "dogged determination of his nurse, Lieutenant Betty Stevens." Stack says Betty literally brought him back to life and for 1 full year was the most important person in his life. So over a reenactment, Jim explains that before he could walk, he needed to learn to crawl. Betty, they show her in the reenactment. She's literally like on the floor with him, moving his hands and legs and arms, teaching him how to crawl. And so this is when I just started bawling while I was watching it. And I was like texting you guys like, oh, what's happening?
I wonder if physical therapists were not a thing then, or if she was kind of
I
trained
don't think
in
they
that.
were because I had written something about that in my notes. And when she talks about it, she refers to it as physical therapy,
Yeah.
but she did all of it.
Right.
So I don't think there were like separate people for OT and PT. Like it was
No,
just.
there weren't at that point.
So she's
Yeah.
having to do all of it.
And she was doing the OT too, because they talk about how she was teaching him how to like brush his face and
Yes.
shave his brush his hair and shave his face and all that. Jim gets a little choked up and explains that one time while he was trying to learn to crawl with Betty, there were 2 base trainees with sprained ankles or something minimal in the
Fuck
room
those guys.
that were laughing at him as he kept falling on his face while he was trying to learn to crawl. And Betty got up and yelled at them, saying he was a man who had been at war and that he was having to completely relearn something that was very easy for them. And she basically like screamed at them and kicked them out. So Jim says the way she yelled and kicked them out, she was so mad and it meant a lot to him. Jim says basically that gave him the desire to want to do what she wanted him to learn. I think that was like him realizing it wasn't just her job, like she was actually invested and really cared about him. He explains that sometimes he'd be in so much pain he couldn't get out of bed for therapy and he'd just be laying in bed crying in pain. She would come down and visit him on those days and would tell him she knew he was hurting and try to encourage him to keep working so that eventually his pain would be gone. He says he remembers her just holding his hand and just caring about him, and it made him want to get better. He said it made him want to learn to walk and feed himself and shave and comb his hair. So they show reenactments of a lot of the physical and occupational therapy. And Jim explains over that he's not sure if he actually would have gotten better without Betty. So she's just a true angel queen. Like, I'm sure not everyone was the way that she was. And I was just like crying again over this whole scene. So eventually Jim got to the point that he needed to increase his therapy because he was getting stronger. So Betty thought that he should go home for 30 days so that his parents could work with him around the clock. Jim's mom explains that they couldn't have done their work without Betty's guidance. Jim says that even while he was at home, he would want to work hard and improve so that he could go back to the hospital and show Betty how much he'd improved. So it's just so nice.
So nice.
After a year after Jim had come to the hospital, Lieutenant Stevens told him she'd be leaving the Army. Quote, Betty never got to see Jim walk and never knew that she'd set him on a path for such a great recovery. Jim says over the years he thought about her a lot, and he knows that probably a lot of soldiers were deeply affected by her. Jim says she is and always will be really important to him. Now I'm going to pause to fill in a little bit of the time in between like Jim's main recovery back to like his basic functionality and then when they pick up with his interview later. Jim was injured and began his recovery in 1967. In 1968, Jim's dad, who I explained was an Army guy, went to Vietnam.
What?
He spent 1 year as a divisional sergeant and then volunteered to stay 6 months more. He said, yes. He said, quote, the Army has always been good to me, and I thought I owed them more than just 12 months on the battlefield.
And your son?
And just you wait, girl. The AP article said, quote, Meade's decision eventually broke up his marriage and turned his teenage daughter against him.
Oh my God.
Quote, for 25 years, I had the greatest wife any man could ask for, he said.
What the fuck?
But when I stayed in Vietnam, she claimed I loved the service more than my family.
She was right.
Oh my gosh.
Like his daughter basically like wasn't speaking to him because of this decision.
Oh.
I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. So the family is totally broken.
Oh my God.
And this explains why the later interviews with Jim's parents are separate.
I didn't even think about that.
Yes, that's true.
Because normally you see those parents sitting together,
Right.
like talking about their son together.
Oh my gosh.
So, believe it or not, this is not nearly the end of the heartbreak for this family.
Oh my God.
At some point, not very long after returning from war, Jim's marriage ended. I couldn't find much detail on this, but I know that obviously a lot of families don't make it through trauma. Like,
Of course.
Right.
it's just a thing that happens. So I'm sure Jim, having lost his memory, having to relearn everything from the ground up, while his wife raised their baby.
No.
And if he didn't remember the war, he didn't remember marrying her. He didn't remember
Probably not.
anything.
remember
Yeah,
anything.
probably not. So how could they not have split up?
Seriously.
She was
So-
a stranger with a baby, and he was
Right. And I'm sure he
And
would have
he-
been happy to like start over with her, but that doesn't mean that's happy for her. Like,
yeah, of course.
so, and they don't mention any of this on UM, which, I mean, it's
They can't.
horrible.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
It's too much of a
It's
bummer.
horrible.
It was already like a really sad story, but
Oh,
like,
just you wait.
Jeez Louise.
So-
you're fucking killing me, KB.
I know. Something else that's extremely sad is that Jim's younger brother, David, also went to Vietnam.
Oh my God.
And tragically, in 1970, he was killed at war. Like 3 years after
This
his
poor
injury and the
mom,
dad
his
going
poor
back.
Mom.
Oh my God.
I know. And there was one more brother and a sister. So after this horrible event, having spoke about the injury of one son, the death of another, and the end of his marriage, Jim's father said, quote, but I'm not bitter at all. You're talking to perhaps the loneliest, but also the happiest and proudest soldier in the Army. I'd do it all again. Wouldn't change a thing.
What? How?
I don't know.
understand.
Like, his sense of duty was just... And maybe, like... The fact that his son was injured and his, like, maybe it's a, like, almost a survivor's guilt thing was all I could think of. Like,
Or like
that
he
was,
wants
like,
to go experience the same
Yeah.
tragedy in some way.
Yeah. I don't know. It's insane. But that's what he did.
Wow.
So Jim's marriage had ended, but he had gone back to school. Like, the VA sent him back to school. He went to Mount Hood Community College and then went to PSU and got a bachelor's in psychology.
Whoa, so close to us.
And then I know, but and like think this is all very impressive for somebody who had to relearn everything from the ground up. Was considered 100% disabled by the military. Like they were giving him $1,000 a month because of this. And he still had, at this time, like really slurred speech and other like issues that interfered with his ability to learn.
But he ended up getting a degree.
Yeah, he got a PhD eventually. I'll tell you about it.
Oh my God.
So in January of 1973, there were a ton of news articles about Jim. Jim's views on the war had changed significantly. So here's an excerpt from an article, and this is the one I was talking about that was the exact same article in every newspaper across the country. Mm-hmm. So Meade wrote a letter to Le Du Ta, I believe, Hanoi's negotiator at the Paris talks, and offered himself as a prisoner of war for the safe return of one American POW.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah, like he wrote a letter.
To try to trade himself.
Mm-hmm. He wrote that he thought he was doing the right thing while he was serving as a helicopter pilot. But he added, "Today, however, I know I was wrong. I will not apologize for what I've done because a million apologies will not undo my past. But I do beg your forgiveness. I grieve for the men who are sent over there. I grieve for the pilots that are captured and for their families. And I grieve for the people they kill." He added, "Sir, America is my home and I love it. Still, in its quest of world leadership through the use of its military power, it's dooming itself. The American people are not evil, even though our government makes it seem evil."
Whoa.
Holy shit.
And I was like, pause here for how true that rings today.
Oh my God.
And then it said, in a slow, sometimes shaky voice, Meade speaks of the 5 medals he won and of his father, a career Army officer in Vietnam. But most often, his conversation alludes to his brother, whose death convinced him, he says, that he had to do something about the war. "I miss David," he says. "I feel very lonely without him." So obviously, I don't think he was ever traded out for another POW, but it's just so interesting to me that he even attempted to do that
After
he
all
had a
he had been
6-year-old
through.
son.
Oh my
after
gosh.
all he had been through,
This guy.
like this family.
What am I doing with my life?
Oh my God.
Well,
I'm such a
it's
piece of
just-
shit.
So I have a lot of feelings about that decision. Like it's almost like selfless and selfish in the same motion. I don't know. I'm probably not allowed to have an opinion on it. So let's jump back into the UM timeline. Jim became a clinical psychologist working in San Diego. He says he'd like Lieutenant Stevens to share in his triumph. The morning after the broadcast, there was a phone call from a viewer, Karen Stevens Nelson, which UM did not like take a moment to clarify that Karen was Betty. They just suddenly started calling her Karen.
Oh.
Betty was like a nickname, I guess. And that's probably why he had such a hard time finding her.
Knew. Yeah.
Because not only did she get married and have a new last name, but her first name wasn't what he
So
thought
it's
it was.
literally that he was looking at
Yeah.
the wrong name.
Yeah. So from here on out in the story, we're going to call her Karen. Karen was actually watching the broadcast with her family. Like, I think this is the first one where, besides Eleanor Toller,
So exciting,
where it was like
yeah.
the person watching it that was like, "Oh my God, this is about me."
Wow.
So she was watching it with her family and said, "I treated that fellow when I was in the service." She said she had heard them say that he was looking for Lieutenant Stevens, and she realized that was her maiden name. Like, it had probably been so long before that she had even realized, like,
She was
oh,
like,
that's-
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, me.
yeah. And then she said she, quote, realized this was going to be more than just a program to watch.
Aw.
September 25th, 21 years after they said goodbye, Karen and Jim reunite. So some articles I read said she only lived 30 minutes from him. Some say 30 miles, but I mean, they were close together. Like, it's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
Oh my God.
Jim says that the moment he saw Karen, he, quote, went numb. He says, if someone else saw her, they might think that Karen has changed 200%. In my heart, Karen hasn't changed a bit. Karen says, the reunion today has been everything I expected to be. It will stand out as one of the most exciting days of my life. It's thrilling to see someone that has come back so far and made a success of their life. But then she's like the most humble queen angel that there ever was. And she says, but a lot of people had to do with Jim Meade's recovery, and I was just a small part. She was like the beacon of his life, and she downplayed it.
The way he talks about her the entire segment versus the way she
Yeah.
responds
Seriously.
to it is so amazing because he does say at some point, like, I'm not under the misguided notion that I was her only patient.
And like because she's so humble, I'm sure her family didn't know very much. So like it's so nice that her family then gets the joy of knowing how special she was to
And just hearing
his
somebody
life.
talk about her that way was probably
Yeah.
so special.
Yeah.
Jim said, "It's very difficult for me to put into words what this day has meant to me. It just makes the future that much brighter because I do know now that dreams do come true."
Oh my
my
gosh.
God.
I love
So they have like this cheesy ass music behind the whole thing, but this segment was so fucking touching. I was just like crying the entire time. So in the years after Jim's incident, the VA sent him back to school. He went to Mount Hood Community College, PSU, and then a school in California that I didn't get the name of to get his PhD in psychology in 1984. I'm not sure at what point this happened, but he did remarry to a woman named Evelyn, and I have like a cute picture of them from a few years ago. And then this is from a 2013 article on the Army's actual website. Meade made it his mission to help people with disabilities, particularly those with brain injuries. It's not only to celebrate his recovery, but to honor his brother, Lieutenant David E. Meade, who died in 1970 while serving in the Vietnam War. Both through his private practice as well as motivational speaking and other ventures, Meade tries to encourage those with disabilities to achieve their dreams. Quote, "I've tried to be an example to other people with limitations," Meade said. "I have epilepsy because of my brain injury, and okay, I do. I can't do much about it. It's not the end of the world. There are other things. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've got a wife and a family that love me and take care of me and make sure that I'm always okay." So then he started the James P. Meade Jr. Foundation, which now serves as a way for the Vietnam vet to help the more than 1.7 million Americans suffering from a traumatic brain injury each year. Its mission is to help provide treatment and support for TBI patients. He also became an author and wrote a book about his whole experience from recovery and beyond called Making Your Own Reality, A Survival Story. You can buy it on Amazon. We'll give you a link to it. I'm pretty sure Jim is just still being a true sweetie. I found him on Facebook and Instagram. But it kind of looks like the accounts are maybe run by somebody else.
I'm sure they are.
But there is just like a really tiny blurry photo of him like in old age, so it's kind of recent. I couldn't find any other details on Lieutenant Stevens, so I'm not sure if she's alive or not. She'd probably be in her late 70s or 80s by now, but I do hope that the two of them remained in touch. I did find some quotes from Betty about her nursing program on the Army website, like talking about her mentor. It was really sweet. I found the same LA Times article that I think you mentioned in another segment. There was like a brief mention of them in there. It was about how they had sent out a thing, soldiers looking for nurses.
Yes.
And how that was like the, he said it was the researcher's idea
Yes.
or something, but it was about them. It was about this story.
Oh, right. Which you said, you remembered that. You were like, yeah, there will be one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was this one. Yeah.
So it was that same article, and it was just kind of cool to like read some of the ways they started out and how it was the first time they called it like a reality show.
So sorry, does that mean that's how he got on the show because they had put this call out?
I put the whole thing in, but let me find this spot. It says, but to say that the program relies solely on fate to find its subject matter may be a little disingenuous.
Right. Yes.
Unsolved Mysteries advertised in the Veterans newspaper, saying the show wanted soldiers who were looking for nurses who treated them in Vietnam, said vet James Meade, who was reunited with nurse Karen Nelson after an appearance on the program. The ad said the person who wrote the best letter would get on the show.
Well, clearly he did, and he did have the best story.
I mean,
too.
yeah. Also, I don't think that there's anything disingenuous about that.
No.
Like, I don't think that there's anything, especially compared to the reality shows that we have today, which are
No.
total garbage and completely
there was
scripted.
A bit in there too about how like it might be exploitive or like ruin somebody's life, but Stack was like, we've gotten pretty good feedback.
Yeah.
Like people are happy that we're doing this.
Stack's like, how about you just suck it?
Yeah.
Because we're doing good things here.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
You know.
And one of the producers insisted that was not typical. Quote, "That's the only ad we ever put in the paper," she said.
Yeah.
That was the researcher's idea.
I also remember that I thought it was cool that it was a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's right.
You know? Wow. That story, like when I was filling out like who covers what, I couldn't do it because I've seen that story like 3 times. I've watched it like 3 times and I just weep through the entire thing.
I was crying that whole time.
Without knowing any of the extra information. I mean,
know.
just the true, like.
Can you believe all the things that family went through?
And like you think about the Vietnam War as a broad scale, and what the nation had to go through, but like then take it and put it in like a microcosm of that family.
Oh, yeah.
It destroyed that family.
It caused 2 divorces and like 2 family members to stop speaking. Like, imagine what it did to
Everybody else. Yeah, it tore the country apart.
A death, a near death.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's insane.
Yeah. Great job, girl. That was awesome.
Thanks. I'm
That
sorry.
was-
I'm so sad.
It's okay. Now
That was great.
Yeah, it was
Great
so
job.
moving.
Yeah. We'll be right back after this short break.
Diabolical.
Vengeance.
Betrayal.
Bad hair.
Leaning.
Hi, everyone. This is Kimberly,
And this is Katie.
and we have a weekly podcast called A Date with Dateline, a recap of Dateline episodes. We talk about important issues like grainy surveillance footage, cell phone towers, Andrea Canning's white jeans, and Mankey's hankies. We delve into the details of any victim who's ever loved life or lit up a room.
So find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and iTunes to make A Date with Dateline.
And remember, don't watch alone.
A Date with Dateline is a podcast hosted by 2 professional amateur true crime TV experts with no formal training but evidence lockers filled with snark and uninformed opinions.
From the Hollywood Hills to your earholes, this is True Crime Deadline.
I'm Matt Johnson, boots on the ground reporter and host of True Crime Deadline, the podcast that gives you a unique reporter's point of view from the yellow crime scene tape to the gavel in the courtroom. We paint a picture on True Crime Deadline with murder, mystery, and missing persons cases. My contacts grant you access to those case files with disturbing new details and exclusive interviews. Details might have you thinking, no, that didn't happen. They didn't do that, did they? And then there's the Oprah-inspired Where Are They Now? Binge these 30-minute Crime Bite episodes where you get your podcasts. Buckle up, investigators. You're on deadline.
For more information about the podcast, visit truecrimedeadline.com. Until next time.
All right. I love how you're sitting back with your computer closed. This is your segment, too.
I don't have any of the early stuff. All I have is later theories.
Later days.
Do you want to at least put on your headphones?
I need a pillow.
Do you want to hear Allie's part of the segment?
Or are you good?
I told you I wanted to record in bed.
We're almost there.
I know we are.
We need a few more patrons, honey.
Get us that patron money, honey, so that let's get cozy in bed. All right, here we go. Roswell, okay. So, since this is the one segment that both Eliza and I worked on, the format is going to be a bit different. I'm going to cover the reenactment and interject additional information that I found. As we all know, there is either no update or 200 updates, depending on how much tinfoil you wear on your head.
Yeah.
So Roswell is a city in New Mexico, and as of the 2010 census, it has a population of roughly 48,000 people, making it the 5th largest city in New Mexico. It is the home of the New Mexico Military Institute, founded in 1891, and it is a center for irrigated farming, dairying, ranching, petroleum, and flying saucers. I was maybe medium high when I wrote all of this. Okay, caveat. As the segment opens, Stack is in Roswell, full on trench coat.
Honey.
I mean,
What else do you wear in the desert?
he's got his hands in his pockets and he is ready for this mystery.
He's always ready to get dusty.
Oh,
He's ready for that sandstorm.
yeah. And he says when they first heard about the incident, he thought it could be something easily explained. Which is such shade because he's like, most of the stories we get are stupid. But not Roswell. Many eyewitnesses and strange events indicate that something did happen here at Roswell, something that cannot be easily dismissed. July 2nd, 1947, a violent electrical storm swept over the desolate plains of south central New Mexico. South Central.
What up? It's wild.
Okay, so the storms during that time of year are nightly occurrences. And at his remote ranch house, Mac Brazel patiently waits out the lightning and thunder. Loretta Proctor tells us that Mac was an old-time cowboy, and he was pretty serious. If he told you something, you could pretty well depend on it. Then a giant ball of light shoots down from the sky and explodes like Chernobyl. Like the whole sky goes bright yellow. And Brazel is sitting on the porch smoking a pipe, and he's like, barely acknowledges this giant reenactment explosion. He thought it was a thunderclap that, quote, sounded somewhat different. I guess it takes a lot to phase an old-time cowboy because he's seen a lot of things like cows and grass. So, Kevin D. Randall says that Brazel heard a loud crash at some point during the storm and didn't know if it was related to the storm or not. According to his son, Mac was on the range the next day looking to see which fields may have gotten precipitation the night before to move the livestock. And in his process of looking to see where the rain had come down, he found the debris field spread out near his ranch house.
I mean, it was a field of debris, so it's a debris field.
Okay.
I get what you're saying.
Thank you.
We got it. We got
It's
you.
just like a big
debris field on the field.
on the ranch of the field. Stack tells us it was clear to Brazel that something had crashed into the ground the night before. Whatever it was broken up beyond identification. The debris took up an area that was about 3/4 of a mile long and 200 to 300 feet wide. I can't conceive of how big that is because I'm super bad at hearing something like that and then being able to visualize it, but it sounds like a lot of area.
Football field, maybe?
I don't know.
I don't know.
No, football fields aren't 3/4 of a mile wide,
So
long, are they?
much? No, they're not.
No, that'd be too far to run. Anyway, scattered around are small bits of material. It's either Randall or Randall. It's Randle, which makes me think it's Randall. Says he refuses to call it metal because based on its descriptions, it was more of a plastic-like material.
Didn't you want to touch it
Girl,
so bad?
He picked it up, he crunched it, and then he unclenched it.
Is that like
creases? Were there creases? No, there weren't.
And I was like, a lot of materials do that.
No, that was magical.
No.
I loved it.
Pieces of it were described as being 3 or 4 feet long, but as light as a feather and as thin as newspaper. There were metal beams that were slightly flexible, but very strong, and it was spread out all over the field. Gotta say, in the reenactment, the piece of material that Mac picks up looks like a white piece of plastic with some purple triangles and flowers. It's pretty garbagey. Stack says that some of the materials seem to have strange qualities and unusually tensile properties, which means that it can be bent, drawn out, or stretched.
I love it. I want to touch it.
It does sound satisfying.
Then he squeezes something that looks like tinfoil, but miraculously bends back into shape. And I think I remember having that magic paper when I was a kid.
What?
I'm not
Give it to
kidding.
me.
I couldn't find it. So according to Roswell Daily Record, Mac Brazel's description of the scattered debris he found on his ranch were strips of rubber, sticks, tinfoil, tough paper, and tape with floral designs.
Basically,
my
remember the
craft
flower
cabinet.
tape. Eliza's craft cabinet.
The Daily Record reported that he paid little attention to it, but returned to it on July 4th with his son, wife, and daughter to gather up the material. Some accounts have described Brazel as having gathered some of the material earlier, rolling it together and stashing it under some brush. The next day, Brazel heard reports about, quote, flying discs and wondered if that's what he had picked up. So on or around July 6th, Mac drives over to his closest neighbors, Floyd and Loretta Proctor. They're 10 miles away.
Oh, yes, I love this.
I have to say they really upped the reenactors here, even in the first segment too. I kind of don't want all of the reenactors to be super good the whole season because it kind of sucks the fun out of
They
it.
won't be.
Don't worry.
She's literally on her phone right now. Loretta tells us that, quote, for Mac, he was excited, which must have been like, hey.
Hey,
Hey, guys.
I have something to say.
He was wanting somebody to go down and check it out, and we should have, but didn't. She says it's so
10
casual.
miles away.
Oh my God.
Who
but
would?
I would. She's like, oh, well, he saw this mysterious material and our usually unexcitable friend was excited. And he said his field was covered in 3/4 of a mile of mystery debris after a fucking yellow light exploded in the sky the night before. We should have, but we didn't.
We didn't.
It was 10 miles away. Mac shows this piece of material to Floyd and they tried burning it and cutting it. But Loretta tells us, quote, it wouldn't whittle and it wouldn't burn. But it still wasn't interesting enough to go check it out because I live on a farm in the 40s and see a lot of interesting things all of the time.
Everyone in this segment really wants to try and burn things.
Yes. They're like, have you tried burning it though? Like that was the 1940s. That was the only
answer
science.
to everything.
Yeah. So Loretta says, quote, now I would say that it looked like plastic, but back then, why, we didn't have plastic. And I'm like, we didn't have plastic?
I know, that was
I know, I
mind-blowing.
wrote that down too.
Isn't that so depressing? Like now how much plastic we have if it had never been invented.
And how we're trying to get rid of it.
Oh my God.
So you went down a plastic rabbit hole and
No.
that's the next 10 pages.
You did. It was invented in 1898 or 1907, a super long time ago. But the plastic we use today, like for everything, everywhere, all of the time, is polyethylene plastic. That wasn't fully invented until 1951. Plastic didn't become popular and widely used until the 1960s. We have the Great Island Garbage Patch in the South Pacific, which is literally more than double the size of Texas. And we've only been using plastic for less than 70 years.
Real quick, I did a project in college about how it was the size of Texas.
Okay, well now
when
it's
I was
double.
in college. Now it's double.
That's crazy. We are the worst at living on this planet.
That's disgusting.
Tell about that project really quick. That was really cool.
No.
Just
we
do
can't take the
it.
time.
Do it really quick.
Okay.
Please.
Oh my God. I dumpster dove for like a month and I got all of the plastic coffee lids out of every trash can on my college campus and I made Texas out of them.
Yeah. A whole art
It
installment.
was an installation. It took over a whole wall of one of our buildings.
That is so cool.
It was pretty cool.
It's so cool.
Holy shit, Katie.
I have pictures of it somewhere.
That's
But
awesome.
now it's double Texas. I would have to do two.
At first I read it was double the size of Texas plus more, and I was like, wow, that's really big. And then I read it was 3 times the size of France. And then I was like, wow, Texas is really big, and I should know more about geography.
Damn.
Also, we all deserve to die. We've only been using plastic for 70 fucking years.
So depressing.
Oh, it's awful.
Anyway, Loretta says that it was some kind of lightweight wood.
What?
But wood would burn or whittle, so it's not a lightweight wood. Okay, now that we've cleared up so far, we have found something that looks like or could be wood that will or will not whittle or burn. Ready? Follow me here in the materials that everyone's finding.
Got it.
Loretta is quoted in another article I read. Quote, "We told Mac it was possibly a UFO. Back then, people were seeing a lot of things and reporting them. There were a lot of things up in the air. We called them flying saucers back then. We heard there were possibly rewards out for a UFO if anyone found one. So he went to Roswell and reported it." So I was under the impression that Roswell was the first time anyone had ever seen a flying saucer.
Oh, no.
No. The Proctors urged Brazel to go to the authorities. This is Victoria Peak all over again. Never go to the authorities. If you find cool shit in the desert,
You keep that
never
cool
go
shit.
to the authorities.
And don't roll it up and hide it under some brush either.
Or bury it in the ground and then get
never
shot in the
find it.
head.
Yes.
Like, come on. On July 7th, Brazel saw Sheriff Wilcox and, quote, whispered kind of confidential-like that he may have found a flying disc. Wilcox then reported it to the Army base. 2 Army intelligence guys came out to the crash site, and one was Major Jesse Marcel, Sr., whose primary peacetime duty was to investigate air accidents. Marcel was unable to identify what kind of craft it was. Marcel died in 1982, but before he did, he gave an interview for a UFO documentary film. In the footage, he says, "It won't bend. Unless it's super bendy, like the other bendy stuff that they just showed Brazel bending 5 minutes ago. So we now know that the material was either bendy, not bendy, could burn, didn't burn." Marcel said it was as thin as tinfoil and a pack of cigarettes. And that they took a 16-pound sledgehammer to it, and it didn't make a dent. Wow, they're really kicking the shit out of this possibly space material.
Well, those are their scientific methods.
I know. They're like, let's burn it and try to beat it to death.
Yeah,
And if that doesn't fly, then I guess let's cover it up. I don't know.
Yeah, what are they trying to discover
Yeah,
with
what
doing
was the
that?
end goal?
Well, I guess they're trying to show this is an unearthly property because it
Right.
can't.
Because
Any earthly things that we're doing to it aren't working.
Right.
Our earthly things being total abject violence.
And fire.
Well, yeah.
Marcel says he was certain that it wasn't a weather balloon, an aircraft, or a missile. On July 7th, Major Marcel loaded up his car with remnants from the crash, but before going to the base, he stopped by his home to show his family what he had found, which is like definitely what the military would want. His son, Jesse Marcel Jr., says his dad woke he and his mother up to show them what he'd found because it was so unusual.
Yeah,
So-
wasn't it like the middle of the night,
Yeah.
too?
So it's 2 a.m. and the family is examining the material. It's like spread out on their dining room table.
Yes.
Yeah, that poor boy. He's
like,
wakes up
comes
his
out.
son.
He like is rubbing his eyes.
Yeah.
He's like, I think these are hieroglyphics.
Just like your segment with the stones, the magic rock.
It's silliness. So Jesse was 11 at the time and remembers remembers the night vividly. He's one of the few people alive at the time who handled the debris. Jesse discovered a short piece of I-beam which was covered with strange symbols and embossed markings. Jesse said it could be described as Egyptian-type hieroglyphs, but not really. The symbols in the I-beam were more of a geometric type of a configuration in various designs. It had a violet-purple type of color and was an embossed part of the metal itself.
It doesn't look like a language to me.
It doesn't either.
not at all,
No,
no.
it looks like Eliza's crafting tape.
Thank you.
Jesse says that he and his family would talk privately amongst themselves about what the materials were, and they came to the conclusion that it was not of earthly origin. He says that if he hadn't actually held the pieces in his hand, he wouldn't believe they existed. Major Marcel took the materials to Roswell Air Force Base, where he was stationed. Roswell was home to the 509th Squadron, the Air Force's sole atomic group at the time. It was a closed base, and the personnel stationed there required a high security clearance. But could there be a conflicting story here? Because in a book that made Roswell famous, The Roswell Incident, Marcel stated, actually, this material may have looked like tinfoil and balsa wood, but the resemblance ended there. They took one picture of me on the floor holding up some of the less interesting metallic debris, which is like a very famous picture. However, there's a lot of debunkers that start popping up from here on out.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. Some people don't believe that Roswell's real. Debunker Timothy Printy pointed out that the material Marcel positively identified as being part of what he recovered is actually material that skeptics and UFO advocates agree is debris from a balloon device. Ruh-roh. After that fact was pointed out to Marcel, he changed his story to say that the material was not what he recovered at all. The shifting claims of Jesse Marcel, whose suspicion that what he recovered in 1947 was, quote, not of this world, was what sparked interest in the Roswell incident in the first place. That cast serious doubt on the reliability of what he claimed to be true. The whole Roswell incident started with Marcel bringing home a box of garbage that some guy found on a ranch, supposedly, to his family. And his 11-year-old son was like, gee whiz, Dad, this is absolutely not of this earth. And then the Roswell incident happened.
Yes.
Anytime you want to interject. I thought you might be opening your computer to contribute.
I thought she was getting ready.
No, I was going to actually look up spiral notebooks and then also a maid service for my house. I'm not fucking kidding.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'll continue. Back to Stack. He tells us the next morning it is thought that some of the materials were flown to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, with a stop in Carswell Air Base in Fort Worth, Texas. That same morning, Colonel William Blanchard, the commanding officer in Roswell, made a crucial decision. He went public with the story of Mac Brazel's discovery. Second Lieutenant Walter Haut was the public information officer for the Roswell base at the time. Colonel Blanchard ordered him to issue a press release telling the country that the Army had found the wreckage of a flying saucer. Lieutenant Haut says, quote, in 1947, when a colonel told a first lieutenant to do something, the first lieutenant did that. I'm sure if I would have asked him to have seen it, he would have said no, and that would have been the end of the subject. There's a little bit of a difference. You don't have any democracy back in 1947 in the military establishment. Not like today.
It's so democratized today.
I mean, yeah.
So much has changed.
They're constantly voting.
What do you think?
What's your opinion, Private? Okay. So First Lieutenant Walter Haut took the releases into town. The colonel told him to do so because, quote, he didn't want them to think we were going to go over their heads and not cooperate with them. I have no idea. This sentence is taken completely out of context, but I think the colonel was like, take this into town to the local paper first, because that's where the first article was published a couple days before the others. So I guess like he was like, let's give the press release to the Roswell Daily Tribune. And that's all that I could glean from that like super weird statement. What do you think? Just kidding.
I have it right here. I have that.
What did you say?
Same thing.
All right. So
there wasn't a lot of information on like, you know, it's just like the local paper's headline and what it said. And then it's how it sent a bunch of people crazy. It made people go crazy.
It did. Stack reads as the press release in part, but I'll read it to you in full because it's super fucking weird. And follow me here because I don't get it. There is no mention of anything exceptional. On July 8th, 1947, RAAF Public Information Officer Walter Haut issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a, quote, flying disc which had crashed on a ranch near Roswell. The balloon, which held it up, if that was how it worked, must have been 12 feet long. Brazel felt. They're relying on Brazel here, the cowboy.
And his feeling.
If that was how it worked.
Measuring the distance by the size of the room in which he sat. He was like, yeah, that's like from here to there.
It's in pieces. How would he even
And we don't know the room in which he sat.
Yeah, also, continuing, the rubber was smoky gray in color and scattered over an area about 200 yards in diameter. Rubber is already invented. It was invented in 1837. Space didn't do that. Aliens didn't do that. So, again, not impressive.
Wow.
When the debris was gathered up, the tinfoil, this is the press release, the tinfoil, paper, tape, and sticks made a bundle about 3 feet long or 7 or 8 inches thick, while the rubber made a bundle about 18 or 20 inches long and maybe 8 inches thick. In all, he estimated, still the cowboy, the entire lot would have weighed maybe 5 pounds.
Oh my God, who cares?
There was no sign of any metal in the area, which might have been used for an engine, and no sign of any propellers of any kind, although at least one paper fin had been glued onto some of the tinfoil. There were no words to be found anywhere on the instrument, although there were letters on some of the parts. Considerable Scotch tape and some tape with flowers printed upon it had been used in the construction. No strings or wires were to be found, but there were some eyelets in the paper to indicate some sort of attachment may have been used. It's definitely a flying saucer, guys. Because if the aliens were to visit us, they would be like, oh, don't forget the decorative tape.
They're like, shit, we dropped our craft dresser.
Accidentally out of their spaceship door.
They were crafting too
That would
hard.
honestly make more sense than it being a full flying saucer, because there's no way that could be a full flying disc with aliens inside with how little they found.
Yes.
Honey.
That's the press release. It's a bunch of trash in a field.
But a bunch of people just read that headline and didn't read the rest, and then
Yeah.
Then a telex was sent to an FBI office from the Fort Worth, Texas FBI office, and it quoted a major based in Fort Worth at the Roswell Air Force Base on July 8th, 1947. He said, quote, "The disc is hexagonal in shape and was suspended from a balloon by a cable. The balloon was approximately 20 feet in diameter. The major further advises that the object found resembles a high-altitude weather balloon with a radar reflector."
It's a balloon.
Everyone is like, did you see that spaceship that was a balloon? I mean, right? Is it me?
well, even the farmer was like, the balloon.
It's a balloon.
And then it's a disc.
Oh my God.
No flying disc that I ever heard about was propelled by a balloon.
Yeah.
It was floating from a balloon.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
In 2007, Donald Schmidt and Tom Carey published a book, Witness to Roswell, which prominently featured a document said to be a sworn affidavit written by Walter Haut. The document, apparently kept under seal until Haut's death in 2005, described how the 1947 crash debris had been discussed by high-ranking staff and how Haut had seen alien bodies. I feel like Haut would have mentioned that in the UM segment because he was like, I saw everything else.
Yeah.
Also, he was the PR guy. He just sat in an office, he typed things up, and then he brought them places.
Which one was that? Which guy is that?
The guy who you see with a stack of paper getting into the car going to town to bring the paper to town.
Oh.
He's on the phone and he's like, yeah, I'll type that up. And then he types it up. That's it. That's his job. He's a typist. But he saw the alien bodies. So the same day that Haut filed the press release, an engineer from the soil... Oh, right. So I'm like, all right, we've got to be almost done with this because there's nowhere else to go, right? It's cool. It's a balloon, and then a bunch of idiots are going to be like, it's not a balloon. It's a fucking spaceship.
I need to believe.
The truth is out there, which I believe in aliens, but I don't believe these people found aliens. So, the same day that Haut filed a press release, an engineer from a soil conservation service had made another remarkable discovery. Oh my God, so many space things.
All of them.
All of the space in
It's
New
so
Mexico.
weird.
Barney Burnett of Socorro, New Mexico, who died in 1969, which is the sentence that Stack says, which I think is a very strange thing to lead with. He's like, he dead. So forget
Don't
it.
go after him.
I
He
mean, what
did.
he's known for is that he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, his name's Barney Barnett.
That's it.
Yeah.
He was a
doesn't
soil
tell us
conservationist,
anything
and he
else.
died in
And he
69.
died already,
so he doesn't, whatever. But he may have discovered the possible proof that there was life in our universe. Oh, they keep saying life in our universe. It just sounds weird, but it's true.
It's still our universe.
Yes,
even if there's life
that's
out
what it
there.
is. It's not the universe.
Right.
It's our
Ours.
universe.
We own it.
That's why I was like, how
Yeah.
come something feels super off about me saying the phrase our universe?
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't fucking belong to us. Vern Milteus tells us that Barney was a real straight guy. He wouldn't tell you one story out of color or nothing, which is why he was so surprised when he relayed this information about a crashed saucer. I love how everyone keeps calling it a saucer. It's
I
so
know. I
cute.
never thought about how what an old-timey term, flying saucer.
Saucer.
Yes,
Yes.
it's so cute. But they're
So old.
They use it so casually. It's delightful and not real. Barney told Vern that he had found this spaceship during the day. I like how he's like, it was during the day. I wasn't drunk. Okay.
It was before 5 p.m.
Yeah. And I found an oval-shaped saucer. So it was an oval shape, similar to what had been identified in different sightings, end quote, so on. So again, people are just seeing flying saucers everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, everywhere. There's a
Apparently.
shooting star and it's a goddamn spaceship.
yeah.
Like, I had no idea that there was such a fervor about this before Roswell even began. So it had crash landed and it had broken open and there were 4 beings laying on the ground.
Oh my.
Scattered not too far from the object. He said the heads were larger than the bodies by proportion and that they had on suits. Not like our suits, but they had clothing on. So they were modest.
LOL, the guy who tries to explain space clothes. Don't be raunchy.
Yeah.
There were no dicks, no alien dicks here.
Barney did not see that alien dick, honey. So just calm down. If you're going to ask.
Jesus.
Barney told Vern that he reached the crash site about the same time as a group of archaeology students who had seen the wreckage from their nearby dig. The military had also apparently discovered the crash at the exact same time after an early
man.
aerial search. So it was a party. The military, they arrived too late to secure the area. Supposedly, Barney and the students had gotten a clear and detailed look at the craft and its occupants. Then the army escorted them away from the scene, and they were told not to say anything about what they saw. From that time on, Barney never mentioned it to anybody, Vern says, until the time he told me about the thing. Then Stack tells us that all efforts to track down the members of the archaeology dig have been unsuccessful. Okay, but no. Because you can't just be a group of people randomly archaeologizing in the fucking desert. You need permits. You need permission from the state. It said they were students. What school? What class? How's an entire group of 6 to 7 people could just never, ever be found? Did the government really cover those people up? Really? I mean,
They killed them. They took them out.
okay. Maybe this is who the students were. Curry Holden, an anthropologist from Texas Tech, claimed a student archaeology expedition he led had actually come upon the crashed flying saucer and the bodies of its extraterrestrial crew. Holden's wife and daughter, however, insisted that he had never told them of such an event. Neither was there any corroboration in his personal papers. Holden was 96 when he provided his account to UFOologist Kevin Randall.
Is that an official title?
We're going to call them ufologists for now because like UFOologist isn't a thing,
Yeah.
but these people sound like they're oofs, so they're ufologists. At which time his wife told Randall that her husband's memory, quote, wasn't as sharp as it once had been. He sometimes restructured his life's events, moving them in time so that they were subtly changed. So never mind. It was just a writer exploiting an elderly man who possibly has dementia. Carry on. I mean, there was definitely a whole team of archaeology students there that day. They're just disappeared now. They're gone. The whole account and the Mac Brazel account all come from a book called The Roswell Incident, written in 1980. This is the first conspiracy book about Roswell, written by Charles Berletz and William Moore, authors who had previously written popular books on the Philadelphia experiment, which was a hoax, and the Bermuda Triangle, which is fucking bullshit. So you know the evidence in this book must be 100% on the level. Stack says many believe there's too much circumstantial evidence to truly dismiss it.
Too much circumstantive evidence.
It is truly circumstantive because it is not evidence at all.
You know what it is? Saucer-stansive.
It's saucer-stansive for sure.
Saucer-stansive. Because it's not any circumstantial evidence. It's just anecdotal evidence and hearsay.
So much hearsay.
Stack's like, okay, here's the circumstantive evidence.
I hope you've listened to season 1 if you think we're saying it wrong. We're making a jab.
This is the circumstantial evidence that Stack provides with this story. Vern says his friend Barney had integrity. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Because then we cut back to Brazel's
I
UFO.
fully trust. I
Evidence,
trust.
honey. Evidence.
I mean, that's evidence. They said that they weren't ever going to tell anybody about this UFO. They told me, probably only me. So they're legit. So then the reenactment switches back to Brazel's UFO. Stack says that on July 8th, 1947, newspapers published accounts that a UFO had crashed in New Mexico. That same day, according to some investigators, a plane landed in Fort Worth carrying the debris. And with hours, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, when I was thinking this in my head over and over, it was Ramey. And I was like, spell that the way you need to spell it so you don't keep saying Ramey.
Yes, honey.
Roger Ramey released a new press release that the record recovered in New Mexico was not a UFO, but the wreckage of a U.S. Army weather balloon. At the base, Warrant Officer Irving Newton confirmed Ramey's preliminary opinion, identifying the object as being a weather balloon and its, quote, kite, a nickname for a radar reflector used to track the balloons from the ground. Another news release was issued, this time from Fort Worth, describing the object as being a weather balloon. Cut back to Jesse, saying that although his dad knew it wasn't a weather balloon, he had a life and a career with the Army. He couldn't exactly go public and say it wasn't a weather balloon.
What? Like, everyone let this just blow way, way, way out of proportion.
But here's the thing, is that it went away. They were like, yo, it was a weather balloon. And then everybody else was like, okay. And it went away for 40 years, basically. Like, nobody talked about it.
Weird.
Yeah.
So it didn't get popular again until like the 80s?
Until 1978, yeah. A press conference was held featuring the debris said to be from a crashed object, which matched the weather balloon description. Historian Robert Goldberg wrote that the intended effect was achieved. Quote, the story died the next day. Stack then says the incident was still very much alive for Mac Brazel. Poor Brazel. You're just trying to live your life as an old-timey cowboy and suddenly have the U.S. Army interrogating you and you're kidnapped to the base until the rest of the country forgets about the UFO that landed.
Poor guy.
What a nightmare.
He sucks.
He just wants to raise cattle. Like, give the man a break. In Roswell, Floyd Proctor and a friend saw Brazel, and Brazel was flanked by Army men and seemed to ignore Proctor. Although in the reenactment, it's clear that he's not allowed to talk to him because he makes eye contact like 6 times. It's clear that he can't talk to him. It's not a mystery. Like, they were like, don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally longingly looking at his friend as he's being driven away.
Yeah.
Loretta describes the scene and then says that Brazel wouldn't talk about it after he got back home, except to say that if he ever found something else, he wouldn't report it. If you find treasure or a spaceship, figure that shit out on your own. When Brazel got home, all traces of the wreckage were gone. The incident faded from the attention of UFO enthusiasts for more than 30 years. For 30 years, no one really talked about Roswell. The public accepted that it was a weather balloon and life ticked on. But for some reason, it came back between 1978 and the early 1990s. UFO researchers, such as Stanton T. Friedman, that crazy guy who shows up at the end of the segment, who's like, William Moore and the team of Kevin D. Randell interviewed several hundred people who claimed to have had a connection with the events at Roswell in 1947. I don't know if those specific researchers were waiting until they could legally have access to documents through the Freedom of Information Act, or if one Roswell witness came forward, got a little bit of attention, and then a ton came forward. UM does remind us that only 2 people have claimed to see the bodies of the aliens, and a few more have only seen the materials from the crash site, but they don't mention that hundreds of people were interviewed. Kevin D. Randell says everything went to right field and that one of the bodies went to the CIA in Langley and another to MacDill Air Force Base in Florida, where they have an aerospace medicine facility. And then Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist, shows up. He says the reason for the cover-up is pretty straightforward. It was 2 years after the worst war the planet had ever seen. There were, quote, no nice guys saying hi sort of thing. And they didn't know how to deal with them. And what could you tell the public? It would have been irresponsible to say, they're aliens. They're here. We can't stop them from flying over the country.
Yes.
We don't know what they want or where they're from, but we thought you'd like to know. Friedman is sassy. He is like, full stop.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
I know. He's like, shut up. What are we supposed to tell you, idiots? Stack says, in spite of the circumstantial evidence, what circumstantial evidence? There wasn't enough evidence to dispute the Army's explanation that the wreckage was a weather balloon. No kidding, because there's no evidence. In 1984, a top-secret document known as the MJ-12 memo, written in November 1952, was mailed anonymously to a UFO researcher. Operation Majestic 12 was a group of people I know, what? I didn't make this up.
Okay.
It's in the segment. Someone else made this up, not me. Don't shoot the messenger.
It would never.
Operation Majestic 12 was a group of people established by the president to deal with the wreckage from Roswell and the whole problem it created. How can we analyze the wreckage and the bodies and so forth? And how do we interact with the rest of the society knowing that we have that knowledge? Stack says that the content of the report stunned researchers, and in part it read, and oh my God, they start doing like a Star Wars thing on the screen, like the coded material comes up from the bottom, it's like scrolling up. And the subtitles, and there's a voiceover, and the voiceover is done by, the subtitles say, government man. So here's what the government man said. And at the end of every statement, there's an ellipsis. Ellipses?
Yeah, ellipses.
Government man.
Government man says the following statements, and they end with 3 little dots, indicating that some stuff has been taken out. How's that?
Sure.
What would you call that, Karlin?
An ellipsis.
Thank you. So here are the statements. July 7th, 1947, a secret operation was begun to assure the recovery of the wreckage.
Ellipsis.
Aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had apparently ejected from the craft.
Ellipsis.
About 2 miles east of the wreckage site, all 4 were dead.
Ellipsis.
Civilian and military witnesses in the area were debriefed, and news reporters were given the effective cover story. The object had been a misguided weather balloon.
I'm a misguided
That's
weather
what
balloon.
I said.
Really relate.
I mean, I feel like I've been a misguided weather balloon all summer.
Oh, girl, you have.
Or if you think about like a misguided weather balloon, it's
accurate.
like only if you just stayed in school and didn't do drugs. You know,
Oh, but you had to go up in the sky over that fucking desert.
And you got caught in that lightning storm, and now you're in pieces being shipped everywhere.
Yeah.
People are saying there are aliens in you. It's fucked up. So at this point, while I'm watching this, I'm going to say that this document is fake. But I hadn't done my homework yet.
You, Alison, are going to say that?
I'm going to say that, so maybe I'm wrong, and this highly classified document manages to hit on every single item that was just discussed. That's a super convenient document. All the questions answered in one super convenient document. That's totally how the government works. Sachs says that the government has consistently refused to comment on the document, and there is no proof of its origin. But if we are to believe the MJ-12 document and other accounts, then we have to ask the fantastical question that in 1947, did our government really discover evidence that there is life in the universe outside our own atmosphere? Ooh. Well, if there is life outside our universe, the MJ-12 document won't tell us about it because it's fake. In 1984, when ufologist Jamie Sharanda received an envelope.
What?
I'm not calling her a UFOologist.
She's saying ufologist every time now.
Received an envelope containing film, which, when developed, showed images of 8 pages of documents that appeared to be briefing papers describing Operation Majestic 12. The documents purported to reveal a secret committee of 12 supposedly authorized by the United States President Harry S. Truman, which is funny because in the image UM shows of the MJ-12 document, it's addressed to Eisenhower. That was another bullshit document involving our buddy Stanton T. Friedman, along with another UFO researcher, Bill Moore. They said they received a series of anonymous messages that led them to find what has been called the Cutler-Twining Memo while searching declassified files in the National Archives in 1985. That document was purported to be written by President Eisenhower's assistant Robert Cutler to General Nathan F. Twining and containing a reference to Majestic 12. UFO debunker Philip Klass's investigation of the MJ-12 documents found that Robert Cutler was actually out of the country on the date he was supposedly wrote the Cutler-Twining Memo, and that the Truman signature was, quote, a pasted-on photocopy of a genuine signature, including accidental scratch marks. Other discrepancies noted by Klass included the distinctive date format that matched one used in Moore's personal letters, and a conversation in which Moore confided that he was contemplating creating and releasing some hoax top-secret documents in hopes that such a bogus document would encourage former military and intelligence officials who knew about government's alleged UFO cover-up to break their oaths of secrecy. Also, according to journalist Howard Bloom, the name Majestic 12 had been prefigured in the UFO community when Bill Moore asked the National Enquirer reporter Bob Pratt in 1882 to collaborate on a novel called Majestic 12. The United States Air Force of Special Investigations stated no such committee had ever been authorized or formed and that the documents were bogus. Ufologist Stanton T. Friedman believes that the MJ-12 documents are authentic, of course. He examined the documents and has argued that the United States government has conspired to cover up knowledge at a crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. Stack says that there's only one man beside Barney Barnett who had seen these beings. Sappho Henderson tells us that her husband, Captain O.W. Henderson, better known as Pappy, was entrusted with many of the government's top secrets, because that's what you do with a man named Pappy, and that they were safe with him.
The most trustworthy name of all.
Tell Pappy, he's got you. He never said anything he was supposed to. LOL, this is the second time someone was like, no one ever really said anything. No, really, truly, just to me that one time. So she says he told her about it 34 years after it happened. Apparently, Captain Pappy was the pilot of the plane that took the first pieces out of Roswell. In 1981, 2 years before he died, he told his wife, in spite of military denials, the Roswell incident really happened. Sappho says her husband told her that the bodies were really small, smaller than human bodies. Their heads were larger, and their eyes were sunken and a little slanty. Clothing was made of a material he had never seen before. They were strange. They were not of this earth. Sappho says that her husband was a man of truth. If a man entrusted with 29 aircraft planes, who was a first pilot aircraft commander, tells this story, I believe him, she said. And then Kevin D. Randell says that if the Roswell incident is true, it'll be the biggest discovery of the millennium. Then he makes an awkward comparison to Columbus discovering the New World and Queen Isabella not telling everybody about the New World. I get what he's trying to say here, but it's fucking stupid.
A little grandiose.
I mean, also, I don't think Queen Isabella was like, yo, what up? I found a new world. Like, she was probably like, keep that shit to yourself.
Yeah.
It's probably resources, really? Like, don't mix history and science if you don't know history. Shut up. Then Stack says that perhaps the aircraft was a top secret military aircraft. When did that come up as a possibility? We've been watching this for 38 minutes and no one mentioned that. A top secret aircraft
It's buried the lead there.
I
big
mean,
time.
if you would have led with that, I would have been like, that. Yes, that's probably what it was. 38 minutes later, he's like, could it have been a wicked top secret thing that nobody knows about? Or a UFO? Or is it perhaps... just perhaps something else.
Okay, in 1994, the Air Force admitted that the recovered material was in reality a spy balloon.
Ooh, a combination of both. Everyone was right. Isn't that a feel-good?
It's a feel good. But also, like, obviously, why make it such a big deal? Like, weather balloon, weather balloon, weather balloon. Just say what it was. But in the 40s, they couldn't, and they were trying to use it as a spy balloon as a test to see if they could hear, like, Soviet stuff.
Yeah. Did you see a picture of it?
Yes. Do you have it?
I have it. If you would have found it, you would have thought, look at it.
Oh, that's
what it looked like.
So that's why, like,
look at it.
It didn't make sense that it's not a huge balloon.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not what
It's
you
not
think
one
of.
big
piece.
And that's
lots
why-
of little pieces.
And that's why when Mac Brazel was like, I know it wasn't a weather balloon, he's right.
He's right.
It's like the human centipede of weather balloons.
Gross.
Well, it
Ew,
is.
that's true. We'll post it. But then
Not human centipede.
we'll post the human
we
centipede.
won't. No, we won't.
It's so funny, though.
So, like, that makes so much sense, and obviously. But there are still tons of people who think that this explanation from 1994 is just another cover-up by the government.
Sure.
So many people still believe that there was a crash. Also, it's really interesting that the Pentagon waited until 1994 to declassify that information. Like, why did they feel they needed to wait that long?
Yeah, it's a long time.
I guess, like, they wanted to get through maybe Cold War after, because that was still with Soviet Union, but 1994 is a ways after that.
That's silly shit.
It's silly. And then also the aliens that people felt like were falling out of the sky and landing on the ground. The most realistic theory of that is that they were just like crash test dummies and not aliens at all. And I don't understand that, because why would they not? It would be obvious it was a dummy and not
very
something that
obvious.
used to be alive.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't they like cut it open and do an autopsy on it?
Well,
But
they
there
did
are
a fake
pictures
one.
of these dummies. Right. So this is all just like a few people want it to be real,
Yeah.
and they have made a whole industry out of it when it should be the most obvious thing.
Yep.
And common sense would tell us all, oh, that's what it is. And then we could all drop it. But no. We don't live in a world like that. It's very simple. That's it. There's not a lot of like update on current theories. Of course, like pop culture is super affected by all of this.
Yeah.
There was a TV show called Roswell. Did you ever watch that?
Yes, I was.
Was it good?
I think I Googled something for this and that came up and I was like, oh yeah.
Yes. I remember like hearing about it and seeing it, but I never watched it. Like
never
seeing
did
commercials
either.
for it or something.
It was
I
like
wonder
a
if it'd be good.
WB thing.
Yeah.
Or
and like set in the town and weird things happen there.
Yeah.
And then I was interested. Did you do much looking up of like Area 51 and Roswell
Not
stuff?
at all.
Because they're both in New Mexico.
that's what I was just
And
thinking.
they
The
often
timing
get-
of this is pretty good.
They often get linked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even get into that because obviously, look at me.
Right.
Well, this is what I was Googling.
But it's not like in my brain, I've always thought it's the
Same thing.
same thing, but it's not
It's not.
really.
Yeah.
So what is it?
But a lot of people think that Area 51 is covering up like alien stuff. I don't know. I'm sure there are podcasts about it. I'm not going to look into it. But then also there's all this Area 51 stuff happening right now
Yeah.
in like pop culture.
Yeah.
Like storming Area
Oh,
51.
right.
like we
People want
talked
to
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, the timing is pretty good.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts? So you think aliens are real, but you don't think this is real?
I absolutely think that it's completely self-absorbed to think that we're the only people in the universe. We're the only living creatures in the universe.
I agree.
Other life can't exist on the planets we know about.
And we only know
So
about
that's
a
like
couple.
as far as my brain reaches.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think about aliens.
Yeah.
I know, I don't- I just don't
of course,
think about
it's much
them.
bigger than that.
Yeah, like there's a whole universe out there. So to think that we're the only living things that exist in any sort of form.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't believe this like alien in a field kind of thing, because they always look somewhat human, like
Yes.
an altered human.
That's a really good point.
and like
why
who-
would they?
Why would they?
Yeah.
Like
Why
what
would they? That's a good
what in the world would make them look similar to us?
That really framed what we think of as an alien now.
yeah,
but it would
we
make
talked
sense
about
that
that in
someone
my
like
alien segment.
cheaply made a dummy and they didn't care what it looked like. And it is
Yes,
weird that
like
they
it
would
had
make
to
it
have
a
started
smaller
somewhere.
size, but that has to do with like now medical testing is still barely done on women. Crash test dummies are not women-bodied dummies. They are based on men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Male-bodied people.
Well, there was also like one conspiracy theory that it was Russia that sent the spacecraft over with the dummies in it, with the aliens in it, to put the United States in like a War of the Worlds frenzy. And then just as recently, in September 2017, The Guardian reported on this documentary that was coming out called Kodachrome. It was presented at a Be Witness event, which I guess is like an alien whatever thing, and 7,000 people attended, and they were revealing these like found slides of an alien, and I will post a picture of it. And then literally days afterwards, it was revealed that the slides were, in fact, a mummified Native American child
Oh my god.
discovered in 1896, which had been on display at the Chapin Mesa Archaeological Museum in Mesa Verde, Colorado for many decades. That's how thirsty people
Wow.
are. That's like
Jeez.
how much they need to believe.
Yeah, like a lot of people already had seen that before.
Yeah, and I don't know what the going rate is to get into the Be Witness event, but I think it's upwards of $100.
Oh,
so
damn.
times that by 7,000 people.
Oh, mama.
Yeah,
And then
so-
show them a picture of a mummy, and you've got fucking money, honey.
Oh,
We are-
absolutely.
And that's Roswell's like obviously biggest tourist
course.
industry is
And-
that.
and
Think
that's
about all the alien movies there are.
That's what you read everywhere. It's like, why would people stop doing this? You're making money off of all of it. You know, I mean, Roswell itself is making money, but those dummies that were interviewed in UN, they sold, there's like 6 or 7 books that are like canon for Roswell. They've
Yeah.
been selling for decades. And then they host events and they go, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's
you know?
still a tourist trap.
Yeah. There's this thing called, skeptics have coined the term Roswellian syndrome, which is basically like how a conspiracy theory begins and then thrives.
That's cool.
And I think it's super interesting because they created this a long time ago for Roswell, but it relates to like Pizzagate and all of the crazy shit that's happening now on the internet. There's 5 stages of development. So it's incident debunking, submergence, mythologizing, and reemergence, and media bandwagon effect.
That's cool.
And it's like, so, okay, Roswell, a thing happened. It got out, but then soon after it was debunked. It was a balloon. And then once it was debunked, there was like rumors still in the town. Was it a balloon? Maybe it wasn't a balloon.
I know a guy who saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the people who want to exploit this come and they start interviewing people and they start asking leading questions. And then the mythologizing is the story then, once it takes hold in like a little nugget, then sort of like grows like a cancer. And it'll just take like one story. So like Major Jesse Marcel, the main guy who brought home the box of garbage and showed it to his family. It turns out he lied about so many things. He lied about going to college. He lied about being a World War II hero. He lied about being shot down. All he did was exaggerate things. And literally people said that he was trying to write himself into the history books. Yeah. So like, he changed his story constantly, but it doesn't matter because once he said it and once he put it out into the ether, anybody who disagreed with him, they were in on the conspiracy.
Well, that's honestly what Trump does.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He puts something out there and then some people will grab onto it and then it just becomes a life of its own.
Yeah. This is happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting the way that you can watch it play out in all of these modern conspiracy theories and all of modern politics. It's just this format. It's like...
And there's always a little bit of truth or a little bit of possibility to it. Like, it's
Yeah.
never all crazy. Mm-hmm. So that people have with any common sense, have like a little bit to hold on to, and then you get them all the way to believe.
Yeah.
Oh, honey. Yes.
Sometimes a weather balloon is just a weather balloon.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe, sure, there was like recording equipment on there to see if they could record the Soviets or whatever. But at the end of the day, it was just a human centipede weather balloon.
That's all it was.
Used for... And I couldn't find if it was actually ever successful in like spying.
Doing anything.
Well, it was like it was like an NYU experiment, and it was weather balloon number 4. And they had lost it 10 miles outside of Roswell. It's when the battery transmission died. So, like, do the fucking math.
Yeah.
What do you think it was? I don't know why you would make a really fancy weather balloon to test Soviet recording devices and use floral tape, per se. That's a question I'd like answered.
They just wanted to make it a little pretty.
Yeah. They were
really
like...
throw people off.
It was a bunch of students, like, scrambling at the end. Like, we need more tape!
Yes. I'll just run to my dorm.
We gotta launch number 4, guys!
Love it.
Roswell.
You did most of it, and you did a great job.
Thanks.
I hate this. You do it as slow as you can.
I can't do it slow.
I'm gonna beat you.
I don't think you can do it slow.
Watch me.
Because then you're just like doing guttural throat clicks.
No, you
and
do
that's
it.
a different thing.
No. Those nodes are
I
getting
can't do
you,
it
girl.
slow.
I know, honey.
Listen to me. Listen.
You are doing it slow.
You're terrifying.
You're right.
Okay. I have something to share.
Share it, girl.
We had a break, and I listened to so many podcasts.
Same.
And one podcast that I listened to it's by Wondery, and it's Inside Jaws. And when I posted about it, Karlin was literally like, what are you talking about?
Like Inside the Making of the Movie?
Yes.
Oh, I've heard of this one, but I've never listened to it.
And there's also Inside Star Wars. And there's also Inside Psycho, but I've never seen Psycho, so I didn't listen to it. It is so good. The guy who does it is incredible. He like tells really like inside deep stories, because I've watched like a documentary on the making of Jaws, and there was a lot that I didn't know.
Are you a big Jaws fan?
Yes, it's
Here's
one of my
the thing.
favorite
That's what I
movies.
was just going to say. Would I still appreciate it not being the giant Jaws fan that you are?
I think so. I think it's really interesting. And he does it in a way that it's storytelling too.
You're a Jaws fan?
I literally commented, LOL, what?
I love Jaws. Are you kidding?
loves
You
it.
hate scary things.
It's not scary.
It's
I love it so much.
It eats people while they swim.
That shit doesn't scare me. That's not scary to me.
Uh-oh.
Things that are demon-y are scary to me.
Okay.
It's deep-rooted within.
Right?
Okay. All right, guys.
Like the movie Birds is not scary. Arachnophobia is not scary to me.
No.
Anyway, it's so good. It's done in a way that's like narrative, but also he acts kind of as Steven Spielberg. Like he reenacts conversations that were had in like a amazing way that like he's acting the multiple parts and it works.
Interesting.
It's so good.
Okay.
So it's inside. This is
Inside Jaws. There's Inside Star Wars. I guess there's Inside The Exorcist, which I just looked at, and I love that. So I would want to listen to that too.
You love The Exorcist?
I do. I have
Wait, so
nostalgia
you
for
just
that. I have
said-
nostalgia for that. I used to watch scary movies with my dad, like as a kid and teenager.
Okay.
So, but now I can't do it. Okay. And I like stuff like that has lore about a making of a movie.
Oh, yes.
I love that stuff.
That's why The Dark Side of it is so good.
Yes,
the film.
exactly.
Yes. Is that it? You said you
That's
listened
it.
to a
I
bunch
have
of
so
podcasts.
many things. Well, you're going to talk about one of them. That it was another one I loved.
Okay.
And then, like, MFM just mentioned it, but I also listened to Confronting OJ. So good.
Yeah,
Highly
really good.
recommend. Ron Goldman doesn't get talked about enough. And his sister is the one who is, like, doing the whole podcast. And
It's so good.
She's into restorative justice stuff, which is really interesting to me. And she's amazing. So I thought it was great. And there are some assholes defending OJ still
Yes.
featured on the pod.
Do you want to go?
Behind as always, but I finally started listening to Cold. About
I can't
the Susan
listen to
Powell
it.
I
case.
just started that and I couldn't get into it.
No, I
my
can't listen to it
God.
because I
Are you
can't listen to him
kidding?
talking. I can't listen to
Well,
him.
and that's the thing. A lot of people have that problem. I do not have that problem. I get
Yeah,
it.
because you
I
listened to the
understand,
other one, right?
like
where
the
the guy.
stance behind it.
Well, you also listened to the other podcast that was kind of controversial, where it was the girl that was going to bomb them all.
Oh yeah,
So, like, I can't listen when
Yes.
the bad guy is talking. I can't,
totally.
I can't do it.
Whereas, like, I can't not listen.
Yeah.
I'm like fascinated. Which he's just like the most insane, like fucked up, bizarre person I can think of. It will make you like tear your hair out.
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's really good.
And he's one of those kind of like Dr. Death and stuff who just had crazy amounts of self-esteem,
Yeah.
crazy amounts of I can do anything
I want.
And that's so dangerous.
Yeah, I've heard that story on probably several other podcasts, but this one has because this man was so obsessed with documenting his life. So was his dad. It's weird. But they have all this material.
Right.
That's his voice reading his own journals. They also have her journals because she kept this like giant chest of journals, which her family got.
Whoa.
So it's really like intimate, like you know exactly what was going on in that family, and it's pretty crazy.
I'll listen again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also Mindhunter, which I've been posting stories about. I know Eliza's medium on.
It's
Less
fine.
than
I'm
medium.
actually loving the stories because then I get to see the parts that I would want to watch. Like, I love to see how much they made the actors look like the...
Oh, yeah. I hope they get an Emmy at least. Like the makeup and prosthetic
Oh, my
people.
God.
Oh, for
of
real.
course.
But yeah, it's good.
So I wasn't going to talk about this, but in terms of recording, like people being obsessed, there's a podcast called The Clearing, and it's about Edward Wayne Edwards, who ended up being a serial killer, and he was turned in eventually by his daughter.
I know that name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I think maybe a UM missing persons might end with Edward Wayne Edwards in our future. I'm not entirely sure, but I think maybe eventually.
Okay.
But he recorded everything. So he recorded phone calls. He recorded himself talking. He would be on the phone and he would record people and try to get them to say bad things about other family members so that he could play it back.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's also like a weird control thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you like that. The Clearing is absolutely
sounds
another.
great.
Yeah. And it's still running. So I think it's on like episode 7 right now. And then the other one that you wanted to talk about too is Noble Blood.
I love it so much.
Oh my God. Do you want to talk about why you love it?
Well, I love royal stuff. And I went to Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, when I was in
Right.
France a few months ago. And then, like, the first episode of this I listened to was Marie Antoinette's
How sad was it? It was
story, which is so
heartbreaking.
sad. And, like, so I saw where she had, like, escaped from, which was really cool. So Marie Antoinette's is, like, a popular story most of us know, but it definitely had things I didn't know. And then the other episodes they've had, I didn't know anything
about
of them.
Yeah.
History of Royals.
Well, it's history of royals and like either like how they were taken out of power and came back to power or how they were taken out of power.
Doesn't she have the best voice of all time?
Well, Dana Schwartz, like I think she has hosted other things because her voice is like butter. I mean, I would listen to her like read the phone book. Her voice is so amazing.
It's amazing.
It's really good.
It's really good. I love it so much.
Yeah, so I think are those all of our hiatus recommendations?
Look at us.
Look at us listening to things only. Nothing else important.
Mine was watching.
That's true.
I had a watching.
None of us had anything else important happen in the last 8 weeks. Just
That's all it
That's
was.
it. That's all it was.
So, next episode topics.
Oh.
Let's get on with it.
I have the unexplained death of Jack Brown. I know nothing about it.
Mine is The Unexplained. Cambridge, Pennsylvania. I'm having my lines fed to me because I don't know anything about the next episode.
I've got a Friday of William Eugene Hilliard. I expect a full musical.
You know what? You're going to have to start doing that to get through these Fridays.
Oh, truly.
We're going to have to get real creative.
Oh, that would be fun. I could be like, so William was a boy from...
Please, someone call
can't
Lin-Manuel Miranda and help us write a musical about William Eugene Hilliard.
I look forward. Go to patreon.com/Resolved Mysteries Podcast if you're interested in supporting us there. If you subscribe at the $5 a month level or higher, you'll get 2 extra episodes a month and a shout out on our show. To see photos we reference in the episode, follow us on Instagram at @re_solved mysteries, on Facebook and Twitter at Resolve the Pod. You can contact us at resolvedmysteriespodcast.com or at our P.O. Box 14005, Portland, Oregon 97293.
At our P.O. Box or our email, you can send us your stories for listener short stack episodes so we can keep making those for you. So you can talk to us about cold cases or unsolved mysteries or nostalgia you have surrounding the show. And then something important, another way to support the show is just by subscribing. That helps to other people to find us. Of course, like we mentioned, if you like us, please leave a 5-star review and write a review, and then we can donate $1 to an organization. And this month's is Relay for Life. And of course, tell a friend. And I think that's all. Everyone make your best alien noise.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
So at the end of every statement, there's an ellipses.
An ellipsis.
Both. Ellipse, ellipsi.
You said an. Go ahead.
And,
That's right.
And
You say an.
ellipses.
when you
An ellipsis.
An ellipsis.
What are you?
Ellipses is plural.
Oh. So at the end of each statement, there's...
Is there an alien in here?
At the end of each statement, there's an alien
I thought you were
who's going to
saying
translate.
an. I thought you were talking about the an or the a part, not the ellipsis part. Sorry.
So if there's one statement, but it's in multiple statements in a row, but each ends in an ellipses, is that an ellipses or an ellipsis?
You can't say an ellipses. You can say an ellipsis.
Tell me what to say.
What are you? But
Or you can say ellipses.
But you're saying.
Okay,
You
this
can
is
say ends and ellipses.
ends in ellipses.
Oh, you're saying in or an. Now I understand.
And she was saying an ellipses. You can't say an ellipses.
It's in ellipses.
It ends in it, like ends in a period.
yeah,
ends
you
in
can
an
say
ellipsis.
in ellipses. I apologize. Please move on.
I'm trying so hard.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So can you just clarify it? Just in ellipses?
No, we cannot clarify it.
You could say ends in an ellipses, or ends in ellipses.
Why? Why can't you say it? Oh,
Because
I see.
singular. You can't
Yeah.
say an ellipses. You can say ends in ellipses.
Oh my god. Oh my god. We could do a listener short stack on just this. We've got
But
one.
truly proper would be saying each one ends in an ellipsis.
Okay. I'm just gonna start the sentence and you finish it, okay?
Okay. I'm ready.
Whenever Eliza's got her head off the ground. Okay.
So, this is the voiceover. Each sentence ends in
An ellipsis. I'll just choose one. An ellipsis.
Okay, because there's 5 sentences. They each end.
Or you could say they each end in ellipses.
No,
Either
no.
one, but they are different.
You wouldn't say they each. You would say they all end in ellipses.
Okay. Yeah. Agreed.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, obviously, this is getting cut.
No,
This isn't getting cut.
Oh, it's a little folly
I
already.
love it.
Okay. So we're government.
Move on. We have to just move on.
Hey, everybody. We know you already like listening to Resolve Mysteries, but did you know that you can get paid while you listen to us and some of your other favorite pods? There is a free new app called Podcoin, and it pays you in Podcoins to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. Find your favorite podcasts or check out new ones, listen to podcasts, and earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you exchange the Podcoin for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you choose, you can donate the Podcoin to a nonprofit. So download the app on an iPhone or Android, use our special code MYSTERIES, and you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. I use it to listen to the pods I already like The Shrink Next Door and Getting Curious, but I've also discovered a lot of other podcasts on there too. There are over 500,000 on there, so you'll definitely find something new. Download the Podcoin app on your mobile device, use our code MYSTERIES for 300 Podcoin, and get a reward for something you're doing anyway, binging on podcasts.